Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rahma Winda. I'm from 5C of English Education Department, State Islamic University of Sultan Syarif Kasim Riau. So I make this video to fulfill my assignment from my lecture Mr. Nuardi in Research and Development subject. Well, in this occasion, I would like to explain about role-playing. Role-play is defined as participation in simulation of social situations that intend to highlight roles or rules context that govern real-life social episodes. Various role-play methods have been identified by Hamilton in 1976 and differentiated in terms of a passive-active distinction. First, the individual may be asked simply to imagine a situation or actually to perform it. Hamilton, 1976, termed this an imaginary performed situation. Second, in connection with performed role play, he distinguished between structured and unstructured activities, the difference depending upon whether the individual is restricted by the experimenter to present form or lines. This Hamilton calls strict improvised distinction. Third, the participants' activities may be verbal responses, usually for paper and pencil variety, or behavioral involving something much more akin to acting. Role-playing versus deception, the argument. The objection to the use of deception in experimental research are articulated as follows. Lying, cheating, and deceiving contradict the norm that we typically try to apply in our everyday social interaction. The use of deception in the study of interpersonal relations is equally reprehensible. Number 2, the use of deception is epistemologically unsound because it rests upon the acceptance of a less than adequate model of the subject as a person. Deception studies generally try to exclude the human capacities of the subject for choice and self-presentation. Number 3, the use of deception is methodologically unsound. Deception research depends upon a continuing supply of subject work enough to the intention of the researcher. But word soon get round and potential subjects come to expect that they will be deceived. Role-playing versus deception, the evidence. Milgram's obedience to authority experiments. In a series of studies from 1963 to 1974, Milgram carried out numerous variations on a basic obedience experiments which involve individuals acting one at a time as teachers of another subject. Teachers were required to administer electric shock of increasing severity every time the learner failed to make a correct response to a verbal learning task. Over the year, Milgram involved over 1,000 subjects in the experiment. Subject incidentally were drawn from all walks of life rather than from undergraduate psychology classes. Milgram, 1974, report that typically some 67% of his teachers delivered the maximum electric shock to the learner despite the fact that such a degree of severity was clearly labeled as highly dangerous to the psychical well-being of the person on the receiving end. Role-playing in educational setting. Role-playing, gaming, and computer simulation are three strands of development in simulation studies. The distinction between these three types of simulation, role-playing, game, and computer, is by no means clear-cut. For example, simulation games often contain role-playing activities and may be designed with computer backup service to expedite their procedures. In this section, we focus particularly upon role-playing aspect of simulation, beginning with some brief observation on the purpose of role-playing in classroom setting and some practical suggestions direct toward the less experienced practitioner of role-playing method. Later, in the chapter, we look at the simulation. The use of role-playing. First, developing sensitivity and awareness. The definition of positions such as mother, teacher, police officer, and priest, for example, explicitly or implicitly incorporate various role characteristics which often lead to the stereotyping of position occupants. Number 2, experiencing the pressure which create roles. Role-playing provides study material for group members on the ways in which roles are created in. For example, a committee. It enables subjects to explore the interaction of formal structure and individual personalities in role-taking. Number 3, testing out for oneself possible mode of behavior. In effect, this is the rehearsal syndrome, the trying out in one's mind in advance of some new situation that one has to face. And last, simulating a situation for others to learn from. Here, the role player provides material for others to use and work upon. In the simplest situation, there is just one role playing acting out a specific role. Setting objective. The first observation made by Van Mans is that teachers must begin by asking themselves what exactly their intention are in teaching by means of role play. Is it, for example, to teach fact or concept, or skill, or awareness, or sensitivity? Depending on the specific nature of the teacher's objective, role play can be fit into the timetable in several ways. Van Man identified the following. First, as an introduction to the subject. Number 2, as a means of supplementing or following on from a point that is being explored. Number 3, as the focal point of a course or a unit of work. Number 4, as a break from the routine of the classroom or the workshop. And number 5, as a way of summarizing or integrating diverse subject matter. Number 6, as a way of reviewing or revising a topic. And the last, as a means of assessing work. Determining external constraint. Role play can be extremely time-consuming. It is vital, therefore, that from the outset, teachers should be aware of the following factors that may inhibit even preclude the running of a role play. First, suitable room or space like size, layout, furniture, and other. And number 2, sufficient time for warm-up, running the actual role play and debriefing. And the last, availability of assistants to help run the session. Running role play, debriefing, and follow-up. First, running the role play. The counsel of perfection is always to pilot test the role play material that one is going to use, preferably with a similar audience. Number 2, debriefing is more than simply checking that the right lesson has been learned and feeding this information back to the teacher. And the last, follow-up. The importance of the follow-up session in the teacher's planning of the ways in which the role-play exercise will lead naturally into the next learning activity. Strengths and weaknesses of role-playing and other simulation exercise. Taylor and Walford identified two prominent themes in their discussion of some of the possible advantages and disadvantages in the use of classroom simulation exercise. They are first, the claim and changement of pupil motivation, and second, the role of simulation in the provision of relevant learning material. The motivational advantage of simulation are said to include: first, a heightened interest and excitement in learning. Number two, a sustained level of freshness and novelty arising out of the dynamic nature of simulation tasks. Number three, a transformation in the traditional pupil-teacher subordinate-superordinate relationship. And the last, the fact that simulation is a universal behavioral mode. As to the learning gains arising out of the use of simulation, Taylor and Walford identify first the learning that is afforded at diverse levels, like cognitive, social, and emotional. Number two, the decision-making experience that participants acquire. Number three, an increased role awareness. Number four, the ability of simulation to provide a vehicle for free interdisciplinary communication. And number five, the success with which the concrete approach offered by simulation exercise bridges the gap between schoolwork and the real world. What reservations are there in connection with simulation exercise? Taylor and Walford identify the following. First, simulation. However interesting and attractive, are time-demanding activities and ought therefore to justify fully the restrict timetabling allowed to competing educational approaches. Number two, many computer simulation exercises can be expensive. Number three, simulation material may pose problem of logistic, operation, and general acceptance as legitimate educational technique, particularly by parent association. Role-playing in an educational setting. An example. As part of a study of secondary school pupils' perception of teacher racism, Naylor produced 4 5-minute video presentation of actual classroom event reconstructed for the purpose of the research. The film were scripted and role-played by 21 comprehensive school pupils, each video focusing on the behavior of white female teacher toward pupil of visible ethnic minority group. A gift teacher of drama elicited performance from the pupil and faithfully interpret their direction in her portrayal of their devised teacher roles. The fourth part, C play, consists of a supply teacher of geography, a teacher of French, a teacher of English, and a mathematics teacher. In an opportunity sample drawn through England, Naylor showed the video to over 1,000 adolescents, differentiated by age, sex, ability, and ethnicity. Pupils' written response to the fourth video were scored 0 to 5 on the Kohlberg type scale. The analysis of script from a stratified sample of some 480 pupils suggests that older, high-ability girls of visible ethnic minority group membership were most perceptive of teacher racism, and younger, low-ability boys of indigenous white group membership least perceptive. Evaluating role-playing and other simulation exercise. Because the use of simulation method in classroom setting is growing, there is increasing need to evaluate claims concerning the advantage and the effectiveness of this approach against more traditional methods. As Megari observed, a high proportion of evaluation effort has been directed toward the comparative experiment involving empirical comparison between simulation types exercise and more traditional teaching technique in terms of specify learning payoff. Megari lists the following promising approach to stimulation evaluation. First, using narrative report. Number two, using checklists gathered from student recollection of outstanding positive and negative learning experience. Number three, encouraging players to relate ideas and concepts learned in games to other areas of their life. And last, using the instructional interview, a form of tutorial carried out either with an individual learner or a small group in which material and method are tested by an instructor who is versed not only in the use of the material but also in the ways in which people learn. Okay, I think that's enough for my explanation about role playing, and I'm sorry for my mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.